Former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley is inviting supporters to a special announcement event on February 5th in Charleston. The Republican is expected to announce her 2024 bid for the White House. This would make her the second major candidate in the race following Donald Trump. The former president responded to the news, posting this 2021 video on his social media page.
He still has a lot of popularity. If he runs again in 2024, will you support him?
Yes.
If he decides that he's going to run, would that preclude any sort of run that you would possibly make yourself?
I would not run if President Trump ran.
Okay, then. Trump posted that video with the caption that reads, "Nikki has to follow her heart, not her honor."
Yeah.
She should definitely run.
So Robert Gibbs...
Bigger story here is she's totally changed her mind and doesn't think that he's an issue.
And the question is, Robert Gibbs, at this point, can anybody really do anything to stop Donald Trump if Donald Trump decides he's actually going to run?
He is running.
Well, he's saying he's running. I mean, but you never know with him. It could be he's trying to make money. He's trying to avoid indictments, prosecution.
There's a lot of legal
if he
cases
actually
against
gets
him.
out there on a debate stage, I guess, Robert, is there anyone who can take the guy down? He's still the champ inside the Republican Party.
Yeah, look, I think you saw this at the end of the 2016 primaries. People tried to play Donald Trump better than Donald Trump could, and we found out nobody's better at being Donald Trump than Donald Trump. I think a bit of the irony here is that Trump may actually benefit from an extraordinarily large Republican field that does get in. It's sort of interesting that he's poking Nikki Haley for getting in. I think he's actually happy to have her in because, again, if you look back to the 2016 primaries, Republicans get to a point where it's winner take all in each of these states. And Donald Trump won states with far less than 50% in those primaries, got all of those delegates. And you can imagine if there's a Trump lane and a not Trump lane, if there's several candidates, a half dozen or more, splitting up the not Trump lane, and Trump gets what he normally is going to get, he's still going to rack up a lot of delegates and be in this process for an extraordinarily long time.
So, Elise, Nikki Haley, Governor Haley, Ambassador Haley is like so many Republicans who did for a minute step out and criticize Donald Trump. About a month after January 6th, she said this to Politico: "We need to acknowledge he let us down," talking about Trump. "He went down a path he shouldn't have. We shouldn't have followed him. We shouldn't have listened to him. We cannot let that ever happen again." And then sure enough, we see her shortly thereafter saying, "Well, I wouldn't run against him if he decides to run." So I guess these people running against him need to make up their mind or decide how they walk that line of being critical of Donald Trump if they want to be, but also keeping some of his voters around.
And also how they're going to deal with January 6th, because that is an issue that divides Republican voters. You have the, at lowest, 30% of voters who are always going to stick with Donald Trump. Probably is more around 35, 38 maybe. What Gibbs was saying, he benefits so much from a crowded Republican field. And right now, it looks like we're just going to see all of the mistakes of the 2016 Republican primary happen again. And you're going to see a lot of candidates get in. And you have Nikki Haley getting in the second. Mike Pompeo definitely looks like he's proceeding ahead with a run. What about Tim Scott? What about Mike Pence? What about Ted Cruz? I heard from an advisor to him that he's considering it, but he just isn't sure of the lane. And I think that's the question that Nikki Haley has to ask herself. What is her lane in this primary?
Yeah, and so many others that are talking about running. Jonathan Lemire, this is starting to take on the faint outlines of 2016, where you have Washington Republicans, even if they're trying to be Trumpists, that are being critical of the edges of Donald Trump, and yet you look at polls right now of Republican primary voters. They are beyond extreme. The majority of them are beyond extreme. The majority of them believe that the election was stolen. The majority of them have crazy views about Trump's own vaccine. The majority of them are far outside the mainstream of American politics, and they're still gonna be with Donald Trump. I think we're getting this divide again that we had in 2016, where the base was all in for Trump, while some Washington Republicans were trying to be a bit rational and try to straddle that line. There's no straddling it seems. Still.
Yeah, I suppose it's appropriate that on Groundhog Day we're getting a rerun of 2016 because that's what it looks like we're going to have. And the difference is I think Trump knew where the Republican Party was instinctively. He knew where the base was in 2016 better than the establishment ever could. And that was on issues like immigration and trade and things like that. That's the wall. That's where he really struck a chord with them. And the party, the base, has only moved with him since. To your point, Joe, it's become more radical. It's become more extreme. It's moved more to the right. That's in line with where Trump took them. So it's going to be hard for a quote mainstream Republican to find some other lane, to find some other place to try to beat him. And that's why the candidate that everyone's sort of looking towards, because look, Pompeo, Pence, Haley, what's the constituency there for these folks? It's people, at least for 2%. Now, the flavor of the month. Right. For at least for now, the flavor of the month is DeSantis. Now, we'll see when he actually gets out there, when he's nationally vetted, where that goes. But what DeSantis is trying to do is take on Trump from the right on a bunch of issues, including on pandemic response and culture wars in the schools in Florida and such. So he's making the bet that you have to take on Trump on Trumpism. But when we saw others try to out-Trump Trump, they lost. They lost badly. And Trump, at least to this point, he's still got that base.